And so now they went to the family event with a whole new scope. So it didn't matter who that family member was or friend or a volunteer or whatever, it was a caring relationship. And that made a huge difference, how they looked at the family piece of it.
Can you connect that to what Derek Cook said? I wasn't here, of course, but I know Derek. And Derek talks about 3 relationships, doesn't he? And you can see the connection there. Can I tell
Yes, please do.
Story?
Yes, please do.
On Saturday, I was at an event. It was an interfaith event. So there were imams there were rabbis there were priests there, ministers, and about 60 lay people. And one guy got up at the beginning to tell his quick story. And he talked about, he started to cry right off. And he said, my whole life has been chaos because of the sexual abuse that I suffered as a child. It wasn't my parents, they didn't know about it. And I didn't talk about it till I was over 30. And he said, trying to hide all that and keep that down and feeling good about myself destroyed me. And then he said, I lost my family. I even to this day don't know where they are, but I came to Calgary, and one night the drop-in center was full. So I got a place to stay in the basement of a church through the In From the Cold program. And this is what caught me. He said, one volunteer cared about me. And he said, I had a great conversation with that fellow. We're now really good friends. And he was the person that led me on my journey out of where I was to where I am today. And he said now, and again, not biofamily, but he said now I work for a social service agency, and that's my new family. Those are his words. And you could see him go from crying about his sexual abuse to this huge smile as he talked about where he is today. He's working full time. He's been clean for 7 years, and he's got a new family that he deeply works with. So he can hardly wait for Christmas because his work family are going to do something together at Christmas, and he's looking forward to that. So family it's not always bio, that's for sure.
No. And that was the piece was that, this program and friends and church, wherever it was, became the family piece. It was just that caring relationship. So. How will this apply to what you're doing here at Ambrose, of what your group is doing? How does any of this apply to what you're doing? Curious. Not really? So can you tell me what you learned from this whole presentation today? What did you learn from it?
There's hope.
There's hope.
And families can bring hope.
Families can bring hope. Very good. Anybody else? Okay. John, have you got any questions?
Tasha's got her hand
Oh,
up.
sorry.
No, it's okay. This is sort of just a different question. When I was just listening to you talk about your story, you sort of said like your daughter, was she like in school when this first thing all started?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was just curious, like, what would you say to like stress? Would you say stress was a huge contributing factor to everything?
It certainly contributes to it, yes. She was in her 3rd year university, and some of the symptoms that were happening prior to, which we didn't understand, was she did crying uncontrollably, especially around exam time. It was huge. And so that crying uncontrollably, couldn't figure it out. She's a perfectionist, so anything below 95 wasn't good enough. It had to be higher. And that was part of it as well. We had a doctor friend and trying to help her to see how she could kind of get past that everything had to be perfect, or that whole test should be 100% or 99%. So there was no convincing her, but it was part of the stress. And then too, of course, if you're not exercising, that's the other piece to it. So she had to, and she was good in sports and everything else, but she wasn't exercising. She was studying hours on end, doing all those things. So it certainly contributes to it. But there is bipolar in my side of the family. My biological dad there's bipolar throughout that whole family. And so consequently, we didn't know that. And then once we found out that she was bipolar, then I went back in my history and it was there. So there was lots of bipolar. So it was there, and she had mood swings throughout her teenage years, but we thought, that's just her. You know, these were little subtle things, but of course, if you don't know what those symptoms are, or what the problems are, or what issues, you wouldn't know. So stress is very important. She has to manage that a lot. And with having 3 kids and a career and everything, is lots of times that becomes very overwhelming. But what she's learned to do is, these thoughts do come. You know, when she gets starts to go into the manic side or that side, these thoughts get pretty heavy duty. And what she's learned to do is sit and just let them roll around in her head, but she won't take the action. Whereas before, she took the action. She had, when she was in in the hospital the one time, she read in the Bible that there was a queen that was decided to starve herself and not drink or eat because she wanted to protect the people. Her mission was always to help mental illness, so that individuals get what they need. So this became her mission. Well, she made up her mind. She had a knapsack, and she figured if she lived out in the street, she'd have all her stuff. And she went to the hospital, and about 50 pounds on her back, and she's about 5 foot. And she went on the mission that she wanted to help the mentally ill. And this was her way of trying to do it, by starving herself. So when she was in that hospital, and I went up to visit her, what I tried to do in this incident was, I asked her to read what she was reading, to get an understanding, and what made her think that she could do this, and ask her those questions. And she was adamant about it. So I wasn't going to change her mind, I wasn't going to convince her, and I wasn't planning on doing that. I was just trying to understand. What happened was, I turned to her eventually and I said, you know what? You've made a choice. Because you have 3 children at home that need you. And I'm not sure that eating and not eating and not drinking is the best idea for you. So I'm hoping that you'll take a look at that and not continue this. But that will be your choice. And I said, I love you, and walked out the door. What I did ask the nurses how far they would let it go without her doing that. And they said there was a limit. And what they did was, there was that certain limit that they would not let it go too far, and they're watching her vital signs and different things like that and making sure. So that was the confidence that I had. I couldn't do anything as a mom. I didn't have the control to change or have her change her mind or anything else. But these were some of the things that we had to learn, is just be where she's at and with what she's doing, and help her to hopefully think it through. So those were some of the things that we did.
How would you say her bipolar affected your other kids?
It's a good question. How it affected her when she was diagnosed, just to give you an idea, when she was diagnosed, we took her to the hospital. Everybody was there with her. And then we went home. And of course, as a mom, you cry and you're very upset, and so did his dad. The siblings, what they did was, they didn't know what to do. They were lost. And they would come to us to say, what do we do? I said, I don't have a clue. I guess we just have to figure it out. And what happened was that she became, quite demanding at times, wanting, that she was on this. And as a mother and a dad, your focus goes to that individual that's ill. That's where most of the attention goes. We almost forget that we've got other children over here that maybe need to be part of. And so it started that lots of times we didn't realize that because you're so focused and you didn't understand it. So it affects them that they're kind of on the peripheral side and not sure what to do. They tiptoe. They would not go to the hospital without me or their dad. They were scared to see that episode happen again. So they didn't know what to say or what to do, but there was frustration, and eventually they got mad at her. And they started setting some boundaries because, she was doing some things that upset them. But then we had to learn how to work through those conflicts. So it does disrupt that whole family piece and affects everyone. If we hadn't taken the time to learn what we needed to learn, and we did a lot by trial and error. But here's what we had to learn, is to bring her into the process. And one day we were sitting at a coffee shop and having a tea, and I sat there, and she was in a good mood, and she was was talkative. And that was the clue, was when she was ready to talk, all I had to do was learn, and I had to learn, asked her 2 questions. What's working that we're doing, and what's not working? Tell us what that is. And that day she told us what was working and what we could do different. And when we listened, remember when I started out, I wasn't listening, but we learned to listen. That was the change. That was the beginning. And she would tell us that, quit telling her what to do. And just help her through that process and help her think it through. And she also was appreciated that we were willing to take the time to learn what we needed to do, and it wasn't just her that had to do it by herself. So started before that episode, I was standing in the kitchen, go out the front door. In other words, get me out of here. I can't handle it. And that's what it was doing. And our son-in-law now, he was boyfriend at the time, and when he came into our family, he saw our family in total chaos, fighting, carrying on, but we didn't see that. We didn't see that stuff.
On a sort of broader note, what societal ignorances existed for you guys through that, and conversely, what are some societal supports you guys had for things like self-care and those things? Like,
right.
Are there some external?
What are some external things, or what were some external things happening?
With the family, but maybe outside.
Outside the family. At the time, of course, when she was diagnosed and she was in the hospital, and friends of ours actually, and her friends, started giving her cards in the hospital. She was mad at me. She says, how come all these people have sent me cards? Are you telling them all? And I said, yes, I am. I need to talk to my friends. I don't understand this. She was very mad because, of course, she didn't want anybody to know that she had this illness. And also with her work, it was kept a secret for quite a long time that she was bipolar until some episodes happened, and then consequently. Now, what was fortunate for her is that she was a nurse and had been working as a nurse for quite a long time, and some of these episodes didn't erupt. But when they did erupt, we were very fortunate. There was individuals in the hospital at that time that were very caring and supported her. However, there was one time she was in the hospital with an episode, and we had to educate our friends. And that's the hard part. And of course, her not telling anybody in the hospital, well, that's the stigma, isn't it? But now she's full out there. She's been interviewed at the hospital. She's been everything. And it was hard for her to even share that she had an illness. There was one Christmas she phoned, and they do a Christmas letter. up and she said, she was mad. I'm sick and tired of this illness. Because she felt it held her back. She felt that she couldn't do what she wanted to do because she'd end up sick and then she'd have to take days off or whatever. And it was very, very frustrating for her. And so I listened to her, and I was listening for quite a long time. And I said, okay, are you open to hearing what Mom has to say? There was absolute silence. I don't know how long. I even got the dishes done in the time by the time she told me about what she was on her mind. Here's what on her mind. She said to me, okay, I'll listen to what you have to say. I said, the day that you accept that you have bipolar disorder, the day you'll move forward. You don't have to like it, but that's the day you'll move forward. That Christmas, they wrote a letter and told the friends and families. That was kind of giving her permission. And by that time, her friends hadn't left her or abandoned. In most cases, that can happen. There's lots of times friends won't stick around, but hers did. But I think it's because she was working on her illness. We as a family were working on her illness. We were trying to figure it out, and I think family and friends around us were seeing that. Did I answer your question? Okay. I think it's getting near the end of your time. I just have one more slide. Whoops, gotta go to the next one. Families can have their lives back despite the mental illness. Family, friends, businesses, everything. We all need to team together, all of us, including you guys. We all need to team together. Don't let the stigma get in the place of this. It's only a stigma, and it shouldn't be. How many of you like to be part of a problem? How many of you today would like to be part of the solution? I really appreciate your attention today and your questions, and I really hope, all I'm hoping for is that it just enlighten you that there is hope, as was mentioned, and also that you can see that, maybe how you can apply that in your life and even in your studies, and even supporting others that you know. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mona.